morning, everyone. Welcome back to more CALLOUS Draft League Finals. Purple on green, as you know, and you've seen both these players on the channel already, probably multiple times. It's Manchild for the purple team. Our player one today on the left against Zokuru, the champion of CALLOUS Draft Duel, which was directly before this tournament. He's our player two on the right-hand side. Let's get into the action. First ban, of course, for player one. That's Manchild, and going to remove Metagross from this particular draft. Coming back for Zok, going to remove Gengar from the draft. Then we're going to see a Skarm ban, but unusually, and any player but Zok, I would immediately criticize and be like, okay, that's weird, that can't possibly be right. But Zok has a good track record in this format, has experience, has made some draft picks before that I go, I don't know about that. And then it turns out he's got a plan and he's got a reason and it makes sense down the road. So Zokuru only with his track record. I'm going to give him just a little bit of the benefit of the doubt. But this is not a pick that I would make. And I really don't like just handing Manchild Tyranitar. We're going to ban Salamence here. And like I said, that just leaves Tar wide open, blatantly obvious that that's what Manchild is going to take, and of course he does. I'm not going to try to fool you. I would never allow that in that seat, so there must be a reason. Zokuru must have a plan for that, and I'm not sure that this is necessarily indicating what that plan is, but the counter to the Tyranitar pick, he's going to go with Celebi and Regice. Not what I would have expected. Celebi, that part's fine, but not only is he passing T-Tar, but now he's passing Lax back as well. I don't know about all that. I mean, that seems like such an advantage for Manchild. I feel, in general, lately, and who knows what he's got going on in real life or whatever, but I feel that there have been several times throughout the latter half of this tournament where I feel like Zok has gotten out-drafted and like his opponent is drafting better and has the better lineups, but Zokuru is such a good player and has such a good fundamental understanding of the game that a lot of the time he's winning anyway because he's just beating people in the builder and in the actual game. But the drafts are a little bit questionable. I can't imagine letting your opponent have both T-Tar and Lax when you could have prevented at least one of those, or if you're going to let them both through, then you take one, right? Don't you go like Celebi Lax here and you let the Regice go back? But apparently not. So what a start for Manchild. He's going to get arguably two of the three most powerful mons in the format if you view T-Tar and Lax as such, which I do. And then he's also going to be able to guarantee that that Lax is playing in a sandless game because he's obviously just going to play the Lax and the Tar on separate teams. So, really, really good start for Manchild. Not the start I would have expected against Zokuru in the finals. I'm still going to throw him a little bit of a bone and assume that he's got a plan, but if you just pause the draft right now and look at how we got here, I would not think that it's Zokuru in the player 2 seat. I would think it is someone much worse and much less experienced, but definitely got to think that Manchild getting Tar and Lax is an unrealistic gift that isn't supposed to happen here. So Zokuru is going to grab Blissey, which we all know that he loves that Pokemon. And then the Aerodactyl, I think, is double duty, triple duty even. There's so many reasons to pick Aerodactyl here. Protect your Celebi, protect your Regice. Don't let your opponent have the T-Tar plus Arrow combo. I think all of that is valid. Arrow is also reasonably good against both of the other things that Manchild has. So if we are where we are, then Aerodactyl makes plenty of sense. On the flip side, and this might be Zokuru specific, the Zapdos is more generalized, but I think taking Fori this early, maybe Manchild is a genuine believer. It could be, but I think that Zokuru has been pretty clear and pretty repetitive with his preferences and takes the same kind of thing over and over again. He's always been that way. He does it in OU as well, even more so in the draft format. I think that Manchild correctly assumed that Zokuru was going to be interested in that poke, and as such is going to snatch it up probably earlier than he normally would. That's going to leave him with a 1-0 spiker and 2-0 spinner advantage against the self-proclaimed Stall Lord, a man who loves, loves, loves spikes, and obviously now the best unbanned spiker is now no longer an option to him. We'll see if down the road he looks to the Cloisters and Glailies of the world, or if he really gets desperate and starts looking at the Quillfishes and Cacturns and Roselias of the world. However, these picks are good, and this is why maybe Zapdos and Fori is going a little bit too far. I mean, Fori certainly is a reach, I think, just because you're trying to target Zoc, but I don't know that I would have given up Milo Swampert here. I think that that is a really good double pick to finish out the round for Zoc, and I think if I were in Manchild's seat, I would have rather have Milo Swampert over both of these. I think I could have passed on the Zapdos and the Fori and simply grabbed Milo Swampert, especially when I'm against the Aerodactyl on the other side, and I've got a T-Tar that I want to protect on my side. So I liked Manchild's end of the first round until that moment, but I think that was a pretty big blunder. Other than the Aerodactyl, which isn't meant to be, Zokuru's team is ridiculously sturdy over here, which is exactly what he wants. That's exactly how he likes to draft. Rock solid. 3 of his 6 Mons have recovery moves. Hard to argue with that. Like I said, I think this double pick for Manchild is probably a mistake. Zapdos and Fori are fine Mons, but I think Milo and Swampert are probably better, and they're better in context when the T-Tar and the Arrow are both in play and are on separate teams, and Bulky Waters, even more so than usual, are going to be sought after. Not to mention you've already got the Starmie, so you can have the 3 best Bulky Waters and resign Zokuru to the lesser options. So I think that Zoc caught a major break. I don't think his draft was perfect, giving up the T-Tar and the Lax, but I think that Manchild kind of punts a little bit back with these picks, which are obviously high-tier Mons, so we're clear, but I think Milo and Swampert was definitely the correct direction to go there. I do like these picks to finish out the round for Manchild. He's going to go with Medicham and Hariyama, makes a ton of sense to me. Double fighter here. So we're targeting both the Regice and the Blissey. They're also protection picks because obviously as the T-Tar Lax drafter, fighters are going to be good against you as well. I also like that he's got a couple fighting resistances here and the Starmie and the Zapdos. Not trying to tuck up both sides of my mouth. As much as Zapdos is good and has benefits, I would still rather have the double bulky water. But as things stand, I think the fighters are obviously going to be sought after by both players here, so it makes sense to grab, in my opinion, the 2 best ones right here. So the bans are going to go over to Zokuru, and I guess he's not that interested in taking fighters. I guess he just doesn't want to play against any more than he needs to. A weird ban in my mind, removing Breloom here. Are you really cutting your opponent off? He's already got 2 fighters. If he really wants just a random Machamp or Blaziken or something, there's nothing preventing him from taking it. I don't really love the Breloom ban, personally, but I see why he's doing it, but it feels too late. If the Medicham and the Hariyama hadn't been taken, banning a fighter here makes more sense, but when your opponent already has 2, are you really cutting him off? Don't know. Not what I would have banned there, but carry on. Manchild is going to ban Claydol. That seems pretty straightforward. He's got Starmie and Fori, and then Claydol is probably the other of the best 3 rapid spinners, so those are now all unavailable to Zokuru. Currently only 1 spiker for Manchild, but we're early. Nothing preventing him from picking up another one. And then Zokuru is actually going to do him a favor and remove Cloyster. That's strange to me. I think I would have tried to pick Cloyster with my upcoming double pick here. So he's choking himself out of rapid spinners. I mean, the only reason to make that ban is if he has 2 Pokemon in mind, and he was absolutely not going to take Cloyster with his upcoming double pick. That's the only way you ban it there. Otherwise, I think you should take it. The ban here, like I said, is going to really limit Zokuru's options for spinners. I mention these guys every video, but you do have the Donphans and the Blastoises of the world. Those guys are totally fine. Zokuru is partial to Armaldo, and it's good against all of T-Tar, Snorlax, and to a lesser extent Starmie. So I think Armaldo coming into play at some point during this isn't the craziest idea, especially knowing that Zoc tends to favor that Mon. But as it sits, he's really cutting himself off of good spinners, which I find unusual. He's also kind of conceding the Spike War. Zokuru loves spikes, so why don't you want Cloyster? he must have a very specific 1-2 in mind in order to ban that Pokemon out. And then finally, Manchild is going to remove Raikou. I think that's wise. I think that his opponent's team is just sturdier at this time than his is, and things like Celebi, Regice, Blissey, they can all handle Raikou. It's not that great into him, whereas you as Manchild probably don't really want to play against Raikou, so anything that can be a real threat, anything that can potentially be an actual sweeper is probably the kind of thing that you want to remove, so I'm on board with the Raikou ban. So, why didn't Zoc take Cloyster? What are the two Mons that he has in mind? It is double Reggie as he completes the Triforce. He's got all three Reggies in the same draft. So if fighters were not going to be an absolute premium before, they sure as hell are now, and I guess that's why he banned the Breloom. He must have in advance planned to take the Reggies here, so it makes the Breloom ban a little bit better. But of course, there's still Machamp, Blaziken, Heracross, all unavailable and up for grabs on the other side. I said unavailable, untaken rather. They are available on the other side and up for grabs. So fighting Pokemon are obviously going to be a premium, and additionally, fire Pokemon now, Celebi, Regice, Registeel, are weak to that, but that one's not as bad because Regirock, Aerodactyl, Milotic, Swampert, and basically Blissey all resist that, so that part's not as egregious, but fighters certainly gonna be a premium and gonna be something that Zokuru needs to address. I would like to see him take a Gyarados and maybe even an Arcanine as well in the future, get some Intimidate, and try to make the fighter matchup a little bit better. That being said, I find these picks strange for Manchild. I feel like Zoc is blatantly showing you a fighting weakness, and that's something you're supposed to capitalize on, but he goes a completely different way and is going to go Alakazam and Umbreon, which doesn't make a ton of sense to me. Zokuru already has a mountain of special walls in place. If there's something that Zokuru's team does well, it's having big, fat, do-nothing walls that shut down other things. Between the Celebi, the Regice, the Blissey, the Registeel, I think Alakazam is probably going to have a tough day at the office. I also think the top of round 2 for Alakazam is just too early in general. The matchup would have to be absolutely perfect for me to want to grab Zam this early. But that is very much not the case here. I think it is actually a tough position for Alakazam. So I really don't like that pick at all. I think there are way more powerful things still available. Like I said, whether it is Dragonite, whether it is Gyarados, whether it is Fighters, whether it is Vaporeon, whether it is Weezing, there's plenty of options. Both Firebirds are still in play. Pick your poison, but it would not have been Alakazam for me there. I think that pick is kind of bad. As far as the Umbreon, sure, especially if you're gonna take Alakazam, you take a Pursuit user out, and you grab a much-needed second special wall. I guess he has 2.5. Again, if you want to count Zapdos as half. I don't know that that needed to be addressed right now. I still think down the road, Hypno, Articuno, or maybe just a later Umbreon pick were all viable. So I don't like either pick here for Manchild. I feel like there are just flat-out better Pokemon that simply outclass both of those dudes available at this point. And Zokuru is going to take two of those Mons. Dragonite Gyra, way better than Alakazam Umbreon here. So Zokuru is smoking Manchild on Mons quality in round 2. These picks aren't and don't need to be into anything in particular. They both resist fighting, so that's a huge plus. But they're also just really good on their own. That's the exact kind of pick that Zokuru needed here. And that's the exact kind of thing that Manchild should have taken, not only because they're very good, but also to deny Zokuru from having those Pokemon. So that's the second time in this draft where it feels like Manchild had an opportunity to really put his boot on Zokuru's French throat and just isn't taking advantage of it. Like, Zokuru is leaving him a window of opportunity, and he's simply not pouncing on it. Like I said, I think the first one was not taking the double water on that Zapdos Fori pick, and the second one was right now. I think Dragonite Gyra should have been on Manchild's side rather than what he did take. That is much needed relief for Zokuru, who grabs both two offensive Pokemon that he's currently lacking and two fighting resists that help him tremendously. So, huge break for Zokuru. I now like Zokuru's position better in this draft, and I don't think those picks, either of those picks, should have been allowed to happen. I think those should have been gobbled up by Manchild. So, I think Manchild's starting to punt a little bit in this draft. We'll see if he can bring it back. He's going to go with the following: Vaporeon and also Weezing. The Weezing pick, I think, makes a ton of sense. He's the lax and double fighter drafter, so you want to protect those. Unclear if Weezing is amazing against Zokuru. It's at least somewhat good against Regirock, Registeel, against Aerodactyl, Gyra that are presumably strictly physical. Weezing has some merit as well, but I think the even more important part of that is protecting the stuff that you have, the Lax, the Medicham, the Hariyama, because certainly Weezing would have been a great pick for Zokuru against the team of Manchild. And then Vaporeon there is grabbing a bulky water before they start to dry out. I still think Slowbro and Blastoise should be considerations for both players, since neither one has the full arsenal yet of bulky waters. But the consensus is, and I agree, that after Starmie, Swampert, Milotic, Vaporeon is the next one on the depth chart. Like I said, I agree with that sentiment, so Manchild is going to pick that up here. And Zokuru apparently is pretty concerned about bulky waters, because he's going to grab Slowbro right here. We saw a draft last night where Slowbro was not drafted at all, and likewise, sometimes when it does get drafted, it's in the 3rd round, so not a lot of people respect Slowbro to the level that Zokuru and I do. It isn't even so much a Slowbro thing, it's that bulky waters in general are really, really good, and I think that part is understated. I think the average person who plays this format understands, yes, bulky waters are good. So are spikes, so are special walls, so are the next thing. No, you don't understand. You're undervaluing. Bulky waters are really good. Other than special walls, and maybe even equally as valuable as special walls, bulky waters might be the most important thing in the format. They're really, really important. And as it turns out, they don't just have the use that they have in OU. They just generically check everything. It isn't just about checking your Salamences and Cheetars and DD sweepers of the world. They're also randomly good against the vast majority of physical mons, the Donphans, the Flygons, the non-CB anything physical. Even some of the CB users, like bulky water might be your best bet against something like an Ursaring or whatever. They're really, really valuable, and they are core to teams, and teams that don't have them often lack stability. So Zokuru and I share that viewpoint where bulky waters are a mega priority in this format. I don't think most people would have taken Slowbro this early, but I absolutely agree with it and am on board with it. Zokuru understands the importance of that role, and he now does have his bulky water trio alongside his Reggie trio and his special wall, at least trio. So, like I said, Manchild has had his opportunities, but he hasn't capitalized on them, and I definitely think the draft is shaping up in such a way to where Zokuru now has an advantage. That being said, Heracross into a dude who just took Weezing may be questionable. It's also not great into Alakazam or into Zapdos or into a Starmie that's almost certainly going to outspeed it and probably carry Psychic. But there's also a defensive element where he doesn't want to play against fighters, hence banning out the Breloom and probably taking the Heracross now for defensive purposes as well. And I'm sure in one of the games he'll just run it, Swords Dance 3 attacks. It'll do more than nothing, and we'll move along. So wrapping up the round for Manchild. Interesting picks here. He's going to go with Steelix and Miltank. As a whole, I'm underwhelmed by Manchild's round 2. Other than maybe Vaporeon and Weezing that I think are probably a tier above the rest of this stuff, it feels like a whole lot of like mid-tier, perfectly usable, perfectly decent, but like unexciting mons, whereas like all of Regirock, Registeel, Dragonite, Gyarados, I'm actively excited to have on my teams. I am specifically wanting those, and those are clearly way better than the middling and average mons in the format. So even without Zokuru finishing out the round, I definitely think Zok got the better end of the second round. But as far as these specific picks, I don't know that I really understand the Steelix. I don't know. I mean, is it just Aerodactyl? I'm not clear what he's intending to wall here, but things like Dragonite, Gyarados, Slowbro, Heracross, that stuff can all punch through Steelix without any issue. Not great into the waters. Milotic Swampert can get through it. Steelix doesn't really beat Celebi other than obviously just booming on it. I don't really get the point of Steelix here. There might be a defensive element when he himself has a Cheetar and a Lax and a Zapdos that maybe don't want to play against Steelix. I probably would have taken my chances if it's just a defensive pick, passed it back, and then tried to ban it out rather than taking it. As far as him actually playing it, I don't see the Steelix really having that much purpose against Zokuru. I don't really like that pick. I don't think it's going to do much. Miltank, okay, thick fat check. I see a Regice and not much else. I mean, obviously Blissey, Milotic, Swampert, Slowbro, Dragonite, those things all can carry Ice Beam, but like, it's whatever. They can also carry a bunch of things. Swampert can have Focus Punch, Dragonite can have Focus Punch, Gyarados can be DD Taunt. I mean, there's a million ways that those things can beat Miltank, so it doesn't really count as a thick fat relevant matchup. It's really just the Regice. The thick fat doesn't blow me away, and I also don't see a defensive element here because Manchild himself doesn't have fire or ice attackers that matter, so it's not like he's protecting anything by taking the Miltank. Might just be a generic Goodmon, but like I don't see a specific purpose for taking in this matchup. I guess one upside is that Zokuru's team, for the most part, it's not like do nothing by any means. He's got an Aerodactyl, a Gyarados, a Dragonite, Heracross, but Zokuru's team, generally speaking, is more passive than not, and that probably is where Miltank thrives. It gives him the opportunity to get in safely and click Bell, or to set up curses, or whatever it is that he wants to do. But again, looking at the matchup right now, Miltank doesn't strike me as it's going to do anything particularly special. So like I said, even without making the final picks, I strongly prefer Zokuru's round 2, and it's going to get even better here as he finishes out the round with Arcanine and Charizard. These picks both make a lot of sense to me. The bulky waters are largely for Zokuru, though of course there is a Starmie and a Vaporeon on the other side, so it's not a stomp, but Arcanine is adding the second Intimidate user to help with those fighters. I'm a big fan of that. I think Arcanine has a lot of defensive utility. It's also randomly good against the Steelix, the Weezing, whatever, but a key part of it is to just be a good generalist and a good defensive piece. That helps specifically against the fighters. And then Zard is actually pretty threatening. Again, there's two bulky waters on the other side, but other than that, I mean, between Focus Punch and Fire coverage, Zard hits a whole heck of a lot of this stuff. So I think that pick makes a lot of sense as well. Heavily favor Zokuru's round 2 here, and certainly at this point think that Zokuru has the overall superior draft. So we go to the third and final round. Starting with Manchild, he's going to take Blaziken out of it, which at this point he must have determined he doesn't want to pick, because again, remember, he's going to have the double pick after we get through these bans, and Zokuru is happy to follow along with that theme. You want fighters out of there? I agree, buddy. Let's get rid of Machamp. Manchild is now going to remove Dugtrio, which as always is going to prompt me to check, why are you doing that? There is a Titar, there is Medicham, kind of sort of Starmie, kind of sort of Steelix, not much else. The Dugtrio doesn't seem that threatening against Manchild. The only targets that I'm excited for from Manchild's seat is the Titar and the Medicham. Some of this other stuff, circumstantial. Maybe Starmie, but not guaranteed. Maybe Steelix, but not guaranteed. And really not a whole heck of a lot else of this stuff. So I think I don't really like that ban. I think the Dugtrio is really not that exciting into Manchild. I think in most matchups it's going to have, like, at most one meaningful target and just not be that good. So, yeah, not excited to grab Dugtrio or to ban Dugtrio there. As far as taking it, it's probably better against Zokuru, right? I mean, Celebi on the other side, kind of sort of Regirock. Registeel more so than Regirock because it often carries Rest. Heracross, Arcanine. I mean, it's not amazing into Zoc either, but it's probably a smidge better against Zoc than it is against Manchild, but I would have just left it alone. If I were in Manchild's seat, that is not a Pokemon that I personally would be afraid to play against or afraid that my opponent might bring. So that ban I disagree with. I don't think is worthwhile, but we shall proceed. And Zokuru, interestingly, is going to ban Glalie. He's been unconcerned this whole time with Spikers and Spinners. I guess he doesn't, because the good spinner options are not really available, I guess he doesn't really want his opponent to have more spikers than he needs to. He does just have the Fori at this time. The Glalie ban makes sense, so Zokuru isn't forced to take a bunch of crappy spinners. He very well may still take Armaldo, but even then he may not run it as a spinner if he takes it. But yeah, given the state of the game and given the availability of rapid spinners, I could see why he would want Glalie to not be there. That ban makes sense to me. Manchild kicks off the third and final round with Jolteon, and even though I don't think Jolteon is a good round 1 pick, as we've seen a couple times, it is certainly too good for a round 3 pick, and it should make it this far. So that was great value in the late stages for Manchild. Jolteon obviously a threat against a lot of the things on the other side, such as the Aerodactyl, the Milotic, potentially the Swampert, potentially the Dragonite, the Gyarados, the Slowbro, the Charizard. Great pick. Jolteon probably shouldn't have gotten this far. Maybe Zokuru could have considered banning Jolteon rather than banning Machamp, but as the bans fell, this is definitely a mon that you should be taking from Manchild C. That's a great pick. Houndoom, sure, mixed feelings. There are a number of fire weaknesses on the other side, but there's also Aerodactyl, Milo, Swampert, Regirock, Dragonite, Gyarados, Slowbro, Arcanine, Charizard that all resist the fire half of Houndoom. As far as Dark as an attacking type, obviously desirable against the Celebi, but so is the Fire, so it's moot, and it does help you in the Slowbro matchup, but it doesn't super duper matter otherwise, and there are no ghosts right now for either player. Gar got banned out, and neither player has taken a ghost since that moment, so the pursuit element doesn't overly matter as we sit. Jolteon pick I really like, Houndoom pick, meh, gotta be something better. Doesn't really target anything in particular here. What do you know? For anyone who has watched any of Zokuru's picks in this format, his drafts are all the damn same. Takes both of his signature mons in one sweep, Sableye and Armaldo, that Zokuru likes better than anybody else in the whole world who plays these formats. These are very stall-oriented mons. They belong on very stall-oriented teams, which is Zokuru's bread and butter. They perform way, way better with spikes, but he doesn't have that right now. But very well may run one or both of these anyway, because it is very much his jam, very much the kind of mons that he prefers. Like I said, even though it is technically a rapid spinner, I would not be surprised at all if Armaldo, if and when it gets run, is not run as a rapid spinner, especially given the current state of the draft where Manchild only has the one spiker. It does not seem worth a move spot to me for rapid spin when there's only a 1 in 3 chance that you're even going to be playing against spikes to begin with. But Armaldo, with its typing, is going to be something of a threat against T-Tar, Snorlax, Starmie, and a couple other things. And like I said, regardless of the logistics, this is very much the quintessential Zokmon. Sableye and Armaldo are the 1-2 punch that Zokuru always hides in the back pocket and takes in round 3. He likes these mons better than anybody else. 0% surprise to anyone who's been following the tournament that Zokuru would make these picks. So, Manchild going to go with Venusaur as well as Flygon. Venusaur has merit against the very slow, fat team on the other side. If anything, I would like to see him go further down this rabbit hole and take a Sceptile or a Ludicolo or whatever and really take advantage of all the things like the Blissey, the Triple Reggie, the Milotic, the Swampert, the Slowbro, all of which hate grass Pokemon / Leech Seed users. So I think, if anything, this is something that Manchild should push further. But obviously, I approve of the Venusaur pick. Flygon is a rock resist here for Manchild, which you can never have too many of when you're against an Aerodactyl on the other side. He does have a couple of rock resists as it stands, Medicham, Hariyama, Steelix, but none of those things are really all that safe against Aerodactyl, because obviously, if you come in on Aero and you make the incorrect prediction, it can absolutely blow you up, especially the fighters that have no interest in CBHP flying. So you're going to need as many rock resists as you can get. Flygon is also good against the Fire Mons on the other side. Excuse me. On the other side. So, I think that pick makes plenty of sense. I agree with both the Venusaur and the Flygon picks here. Zokuru is going to add a second Firebird, and he's also going to choose this moment to pick up Donphan, which, again, doesn't have to be played as a spinner. You can have viable sets like Toxic, Protect, Roar, Earthquake, for example, or it can have Counter, for example. It doesn't have to be a rapid spinner, but more so than Armaldo Donphan, when you pick it, you're generally picking it for its ability to spin. But like I said, there's only the one spiker on the other side, so it is definitely possible that Donphan gets brought for a purpose of just being a wall and not necessarily spinning. I do like the Donphan pick. We're going back and forth for rock resists. Donphan generally, especially with a protect and a counter and a roar set, is very much a counter for Aerodactyl. So as a little bit of a protection pick, I think that is good. And then obviously against any physical tar, Donphan is good as well. So really good value here for Zokuru late in the draft. Moltres and Donphan, both very powerful picks given the current stage of the draft. We're pretty late. Moltres is more of a round 2 pick in my opinion, so it's great to grab it here. So far the round 3 has been pretty relevant. A lot of the time it's kind of fill in the blank with like kind of sort of usable glue mons, but these are mons that all might really matter in their matchups and have a meaningful impact. So we swing it back over to Manchild, and he's going to go with Tauros, which will obviously prompt my normal resistance check, and he's going to take away Mischievous, which is one said check for normal attacks. With the Mischievous out of the way, and of course he can pair that with Spikes if he so chooses to try to protect, but the normal resists are kind of sort of Aerodactyl, counts as half at most, Regirock, Registeel, and Sableye and Armaldo. So I'm going to say that Zokuru has 4.5 normal resists, which is a reasonable amount. That's probably like right on the threshold of what makes the Tauros pick average, acceptable. If your opponent has like 1 or 2 normal resists, you windmill slam that Tauros. And on the other side, if your opponent has 6 or 7 normal resists, I would avoid Tauros like the plague. 4-ish, 4.5 is probably that borderline number where Tauros is probably fine, but also probably won't be amazing. It's a mon in general that I think has been a pretty good performer and has been one of the best glue mons that you just throw on any team, and it's always reasonable. I never have too much of an objection to a Tauros pick, and there it is. And then the Mischievous, I think, was largely just to be taking it in conjunction with the Tauros, but it also might be a little bit defensive in that it helps his Snorlax, for example. It's also much harder for Zokuru to remove than it is for Manchild, since Manchild is the one who has both Umbreon and Houndoom, so you could justify taking a Ghost a little bit more here because you know it's not going to get pursued away. I'm okay with the Mischievous pick. Not a mon that I love, but it's totally fine, totally usable. I view it as the kind of thing that you take in late round 3, and that is, in fact, exactly where it's getting grabbed. Zokuru over here going to go with Credilli. You guys know from my last draft how I feel about that. And here is Hypno. I think Credilli blows. Zokuru yelled at me in the Discord server this morning to tell me that it doesn't. Show me. I don't see it. It doesn't impress me. When I thought it had Leech Seed, it seemed mildly playable. Without Leech Seed, I don't buy it. The gimmick of Credilli, so it has Suction Cups, which means it can't be roared away, whirlwinded away, whatever. So you can set up this like invincible Clayley with whatever, Iron Defense, Amnesia, Rest, and just make it like unkillable. The rest part is important, otherwise you just fling Toxic at it. That's great, that's gimmicky. How do you kill anything? How do you do damage to anything? And the answer, of course, is that you don't. And that's while Credilli, because of its crappy typing combo, when it could be resisting Earthquake, takes it neutrally, could be resisting Surf and Grass attacks, but it doesn't, it takes them neutrally. Could be resisting flying, it doesn't, it takes it neutrally. Its typing does it no favors and leaves it pretty vulnerable to neutral hits. I don't know, I don't believe in the Credilli, so Zokuru, if you're watching this video, open challenge. Please do show me. Win one of these finals games with Credilli, but I'm a non-believer. As far as the Hypno, I like that poke more. It's not specifically that there's a lot of sleep stuff on the other side, perhaps the Venusaur, but I don't think it's an Insomnia pick in this case. It's just a generic special wall that learns Wish and T-Wave, which are 2 of the best moves in this format. I think it'll be just fine. Zokuru has not even pretended to draft offense in any of these games. It's 3 stall teams. It's all fat. It's all walls. very much Zokuru's comfort zone. Hypno will very likely actually get played and play a role on one of the teams. And finally, wrapping up the draft for Manchild, he's going to go with Lapras, which I love, one of my favorites, and Entei, which this mon has shot up the viability ratings for. I mean, it might just be purple because they have their own little special internal team sheet with pick rates and win rates or whatever. And purple team has overwhelmingly been the team that likes Entei the most. So I don't know if they have concluded as a team that the mon is good, or if they're looking at their sheet and it's got fishy data and it goes, oh my god, 80% win rate on Entei, gotta take that mon. I haven't paid full attention to every single game. There's just too many of them. I don't have time, but I can't, off the top of my head, I don't recall, I mean, any instances really, but never mind multiple instances because one-offs don't really count. I'm not thinking of a bunch of games where Entei went to town and swept. I mean, in theory, it's the inferior Suicune of this format when Kun is obviously not available and Rachi's not available. It's the same concept. You CM up, you sub up, you have a big HP pool, you make better than 101 HP subs, and you Calm Mind sweep somebody. That's what it's supposed to do on paper, but I don't recall any instances of it actually happening that way in practice. Again, open to it. I don't think Entei blows. I think it's fine. It just isn't a mon that I can rate any more highly than it's fine, it's playable as things sit. So we'll see what comes of that, but I've yet to see the light on Entei. Playable, won't be mad if Manchild ends up bringing it on a team, but show me the Entei sweeps before I start getting on the train that Purple seems to be on, where Entei needs to get picked somewhere in every draft. And then Lapras, honestly, probably won't make a team, but I think it's a fine choice for a third bulky water. Interesting that he did have the option there, Porygon 2, that he chose not to take. Also, Blastoise would have been an option there, which may or may not be better than Lapras, but a key thing with that is that it cuts off a Rapid Spinner from Zokuru, which I think he might take advantage of, but I like Lapras. It's a mon that I've advocated for. It's bulky, especially when you can guarantee that it's in a sandless game by pairing it on any team that isn't with Tyranitar, since you have control of that mon. It learns useful moves like Roar, like Perish Song, Bolt Beam, stab on half of it. It learns T-Bolt. It learns Surf. It's good. It's a good mon. I'm a Lapras fan, but not everybody feels the same way. Oh boy. Can hear my cats fighting in the hallway. Hopefully that didn't get picked up on the audio. I guess I might have to wrap this one up a little quicker and go deal with that. Always fun. The last pick is going to be Blastoise for Zokuru. Unsurprising. Maybe that could have gotten grabbed over the Lapras in this instance to deprive Zok the Rapid Spinner, but he's going to pick up his second and potentially third Rapid Spinner if he treats Armaldo as such and is addressing the spikes on the other side, which, to be fair, there aren't that many. It's just the Fortress, so spiking and spinning is actually not going to be that important in this particular instance. It's actually not going to be the biggest deal in the world in this specific match, as it sometimes is. And that is our draft. I thought that Manchild had the better start with Titar and Lax, and I'm really surprised that Zokuru let those Pokemon through. I really thought that that shouldn't have happened and wouldn't have happened. But for the most part after that, I feel like Zokuru kind of took over. There were two specific points that I mentioned. Like I said, the Zapdos Fori pick that I think should have been the double bulky water that Zok took in Milo Swampert. And then this really underwhelming Alakazam Umbreon pick, which not only enabled Zokuru to take two of the better Pokemon in Dragonite and Gyarados that I think are both better than both of these, but furthermore, that fighting weakness that Manchild was really capitalizing on, and I think that was the right direction, kind of punted on that by giving him two really good fight resists right in a row. I think Zokuru, like I said, really caught a break, really was gifted the Dragonite and the Gyarados. I think if Manchild had deprived those Pokemon and then kept going down the fighter rabbit hole, he maybe could have exploited Zokuru a little bit, but that's not what happened, and Manchild's draft kind of fizzled out. I mean, there's a sprinkle, there's a couple pokes, the wheezing at this point I think is good. The Jolteon that late I think is good. I'm fine with the Venusaur, whatever, but after the first round or so, I'm not really blown away by Manchild's draft. It seems so much sturdier and safer on the other side. So I'm gonna go ahead. I mean, I'm gonna keep the suspense out of it. And I still hear my cats fighting in the hallway, so I'm really gonna go have to deal with that. I'm gonna predict Zokuru to win. I think he had the superior draft, and I think he's the superior player. So I feel confident in my prediction on this one. I think Zoc is going to take it down. I think Manchild didn't do enough to cut off Zokuru. I think he had an opportunity with the fighters, didn't capitalize and take the fighting resistances away. I think he had an opportunity with spikers and spinners, didn't capitalize, cut off the Dawn Fan, which is good against the arrow, and it cuts off a spinner, didn't cut off the Blastoise. I think there were chances where Manchild could have made this difficult for Zoc, but it felt like Zoc didn't have to stretch to make picks, didn't have to make sacrifices, and just kind of grabbed the things that he wanted because they were there when they shouldn't have been. So, I'm going to give Zokuru the edge here in both the draft and as a player. But I'm always open to be wrong. First time for everything. Let me know in the comments who you think is going to win this draft, and I'm going to go prevent my cats from killing each other. Thank you for watching.